All right, we'll get started. Good evening. My name is Pat Kwitzel. I'm the buyer and author program coordinator at Magic City Books, and I want to thank you for spending a little bit of your Tuesday evening with us. We have an excellent program tonight. This is the book that we're featuring tonight is a gorgeous book full of full color photography and really impressive. And I know that some of you are not getting out very much still and unable to come down to the store. But those of you that are, I encourage you to come down and take a look at it. I think that when you do, you're going to be able to, you'll quickly decide that this is something that you want on your shelf, on your coffee table. So we've been doing these virtual events since April. We've got a big schedule of future events. One more this week on Thursday night with Edward Ball, who's written a book about kind of his family history and the fact that in his family history there are members of the Ku Klux Klan, and he's really been grappling with that as an adult and as an academic person and stuff like that. So that his book is called Life of a Klansman. And then next week we have a bunch of author events, including on Tuesday night, one of our few ticketed author events, Lauren Akins. And then on Wednesday, a local Tulsa author who's written her first YA novel. And so her debut novel, Ignite the Sun, comes out next week, and we're doing an event with her. And so lots of great stuff that is coming up. And a lot of great stuff. MagicCityBooks.com for all of that. Check us out on Facebook, of course. Follow us there and on Instagram, and you'll always know what's going on. So tonight we are joined by Rickey Gates, and Rickey's new book, Cross Country, catalogs a run that he took from South Carolina to San Francisco, and I'm going to let him get into kind of what happened with that, but the reason that this came to my attention was that we actually have a mutual friend. Trevor Tack is a local chef. He's worked in a number of restaurants in Tulsa and in Oklahoma City. And he was in the bookstore a couple of months ago and was telling me about this friend of his that had written a book that was really cool and that we should look into it a little bit. And I was able to get connected with Rickey, and now tonight here we all are joining us. And Rickey ran through Tulsa and stayed with Trevor while he was here. Also, while Rickey ran through Tulsa, he was joined by Yatika Fields, who is one of the Tulsa Artist Fellows. He's in his 4th year with the Tulsa Artist Fellowship. He's a visual artist, painter, and muralist. And we're really fortunate tonight to be joined by Yatika and Rickey both. And so they're going to be here in conversation and talking a lot about running and the book and lots of other things. So without any further ado, have a great time watching this event, and we look forward to seeing you at more future author events. I'll let you guys take it away. Thanks, Yatika.
Yeah, thank you, Pat. So I guess it's going to be up to me and my honor to introduce a friend and fellow runner, Rickey Gates, here to this conversation tonight through Magic City Books and through the viewers from all over, and I think some people and friends and family here in Tulsa, Oklahoma as well. I'm really excited because there's so much this conversation can touch base on and all the directions it can go through. And really, it's going to be Rickey talking about his adventure for sure. There's so many eloquent descriptions in the whole book, documentations and photographs that capture the spirit of people and places. And each of those places carry a past and memory where the people are also coming from as well. And since it is a run across America that treks across America, that spans history, both in dimensions of lineage and past and memories, I do want to start with the land acknowledgement from me reading it here in Tulsa, just to kind of set the tone for things. So I'm going to do that because I think it's important from where my journey corresponds with Rickey Gates, and this is specific to Oklahoma. And we did cross Osage County, and it was a particular county up there in northern Oklahoma that has a parallel past to where we are in Tulsa. So I kind of just want to pay respects to that in that way. Every community owes its existence and vitality to generations from around the world who contributed their hopes, dreams, and energy to making the history that led to this moment. Some were brought here against their will. Some were drawn to leave their distant homes in hopes of a better life. And some have lived on the land for more generations than can be counted. And some fled Tulsa never to return. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connections across all barriers of heritage and differences. We begin this effort tonight to acknowledge that what has been buried by honoring the truth. I am standing on the tribal lands of Osage, Cherokee, and Muskogee Creek people and Muskogee Creek Reservation. We honor the elders past and present, and I'm breeding on the land of the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre. We pay respect to these victims and survivors past and present. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migrations, and settlement upon this land. Our offers and our care and commitment to acknowledge these truths and resisting injustices in all forms through intentional programming and artistic practices, and even motivational practices and running as well, which we'll talk about that, and running in politics. So with that, thank you. I appreciate you guys taking the time for me to read that. And I want to introduce Rickey Gates here, who's coming in from Santa Fe, New Mexico, who I had the great pleasure of seeing last week, actually passing through on a way to Utah for a socially distant mountain journey out there. But I had an opportunity to meet with Rickey again and see him and experience more of the trail and another journey to summit Mount Baldy in Santa Fe on a really beautiful day. And it's a mountain that I love going to, and I'm glad we could share that that experience and that place together. Beautiful things that I love about running and sharing with people is the silence that can be had in that, passing along landscapes that we both appreciate, but kind of conjuring the memories and just letting ourselves kind of appreciate what that beauty instills in us and what we understand and know. And I know Rickey comes from a past with that, growing up in Aspen and all his credited resume of runs and travels. So it was really beautiful to be able to share that moment with them, just like it was for this run. And we'll talk more into that, but I want to let Rickey say hello and have him speak some on this.
All right. Yatika, thanks so much for the introduction. Magic City Books, and Pat, thank you for hosting this event. And a special shout out to Trevor Tack for connecting all of these dots. I had every intention, I think, to go through Tulsa on my run across the country, but I really knew nothing about Tulsa, and I knew nothing about the people there, and I didn't know that I was going to have a lot of friends from there as well. That's part of the blessing of doing a large journey such as what I took on, is that you get to discover so much along all of those miles, and your receptors all seem to be open wide, and people see that and they take you in and share something really special if you're open and willing to sharing it. So yeah, it was cool having Yatika pass through here a week ago. My wife and I were living in one house, and now we're living in a different house. So my entire office is in boxes right here. But I was gifted this beautiful painting right behind me there from Yatika, which I managed to hang up just for our Zoom call. I'm really hoping that it stays put back there. So yeah, thanks for having me, and I look forward to this conversation.
Cool. So yeah, like I said, there's so much to really say on it, and I know, when did this book come out for you? Like a couple of months back, 3 months ago, I think, or when did it really kind of come out for you?
Yeah, April. Here's a copy of the book right there. I'm just gonna put it up there. April 14th was the date that it came out. You know, we plan these things. It takes a couple of years to write a book and get a publisher and then get it printed and then have a distribution plan and get the hype all set up. So you really don't plan on releasing a book during the smack dab middle of a pandemic. But that's lo and behold what happened. I had a little bit of a book tour planned, which got canceled, obviously, and then just all sorts of things that you just can't really plan on. But the truth of the matter is that I don't know. I kind of thought that it couldn't have been a better time to release a book about traveling across our country on foot and getting to know it a little bit better. If you're able to order something online that allows you to take a journey, both visual and written, across the country to get to know people that are not necessarily inside your bubble. This was that for a lot of people. So the book's been out for about 3 months now, and it's been received really quite well, and I've been very happy about that. Yeah, it's cool to be able to, with an event like this, to return to certain places along my journey that I haven't been able to go back to, such as Tulsa. I was in Tulsa for about 24 hours, probably 20 hours is more realistic. And I just had an incredible experience there. The city itself is vibrant, and I got a tour with Yatika and with Trevor throughout the city and tried some great food, and then ran out the next morning. So yeah, it's been a wild journey in terms of releasing a book during a pandemic, but it's the hand I was dealt.
Yeah, it's the hand that everyone was dealt with, and I think
Exactly.
it's the reason why we're all here via Zoom, a very familiar platform everyone knows about right now. Yeah, I got the book. You know, we've been in touch off and on throughout that shared journey with you that I had with you on the run across America, the 3,700-mile run across 9 states, right? 9?
Yep.
Yeah. So
9 sounds right.
Yeah. So I mean, to fathom that, you know, I mean, I only did like half, just a county with you, and I've done some distant races as well, but, and I'll read some quotes that you wrote in the book later, but, you know, just to kind of, I don't know if I can put that into perspective for the viewers, you know, that's just kind of something you're going to have to try to channel and let people visualize for themselves. But I got the book and I read it and looked over it. I've been looking over it more and more, and I've been running too. And I've always reflected back to that experience with you, because when you came through Tulsa, like you just said, in 2017, it was April. It was raining. You know, the weather here can be temperamental. We don't really know what we're going to be had, storms or tornadoes or whatever. And I saw that you were coming through, and I reached out to you, I think via Twitter. Because I've known of you. I've been a follower of your journey and your runs before. You know, a little bit about Rickey that I just pulled offline, but that I know more about him too through other runs. But, you know, I really known him through the Mountain Marathon Alaska mountain race. If you guys haven't seen that, look it up on YouTube. It's a really beautiful video, really interesting. It's just a 5K up and then down, super rad race in Alaska. And then, and he's been a podium finisher at Pikes Peak in Colorado, Ascent, and you're named the USA Track and Field Mountain Run of the Year in 2007. And then another cool video that I saw of you was in 2010 when Killian came through and you were pacing him, and Joe Grant was with Anton, and you were running through Western states past mile 60, I think, and just the excitement of all that, you know. So you've experienced quite a lot in your running career. You've traveled the world running with some of the top runners, and you yourself are a top runner and an elite runner, as they would say, sponsored by Solomon. So it was really awesome to know that you're coming through Oklahoma and to reach out and to be able to share some miles with you and to run with you and know that you've been in these places around the world and with these certain people. And maybe, just maybe, I could hear some of those stories and conversations on those back roads in Osage County. You know, that's kind of maybe what I was thinking or hoping. But in reality, it became just a journey of just, you know, of understanding our own resilience and perseverances on a shared path, on a shared journey. And it was a reflection, I feel like, to our whole continent as a whole people, as our resilience and perseverance together on one road in one nation, you know? And something that was really, I think I'm going to show this because it was really this map of the United States at the beginning of the book. When you were planning out your journey in the beginning, it was when Trump first became president, and you're in Wisconsin. And then this map here kind of shows the dividing line of your path through the United States, but a coloration of the blue and red states and whatnot. And I know in your book, you kind of talked about the divided line of the United States, the division of people, but to see that in person kind of takes a path of your own path to figure that out and to see it yourself, which you did. And I kind of want to talk about that. So for you to kind of elaborate on that a little bit, you know, what was that like, choosing the path and the people that you ran into and the stories? And there's a lot there. The photos that you took in this cover a lot of that, and they're beautiful and they have their own stories, but maybe just talk a little bit about that and we can start another conversation from that.
Yeah, totally. So like, first of all, like, I think when it comes to distilling a journey such as this one, a 3,700 mile run across the country, it's virtually impossible to distill something like that down into a single conversation or a web page or really even a book. But the book is kind of the best attempt at doing that. And when I was writing the book, I thought that it was important to acknowledge that, you know, the present moment is absolutely, infinitely the most important thing that any of us have. And when you do a run across the country, you're feeling as though what you're doing is extremely important. But the reality is that the 5 months beforehand that you spend organizing this run is equally as important as the run itself. And then the 5 months after the run is equally as important as the run itself. It's your time to reflect on it and to really learn from it and gain from it. So yeah, now that my run is 3 years behind me, I have, all I've got left is to reflect back on it and to relive certain moments of it, but it doesn't necessarily come to me as this entire journey all at once. But in the days and months and even years leading up to the journey, you know, or I should say me in particular, what's incredibly important and powerful is to start looking at this map of this place I called home, the United States, and seeing, you know, what do I want this journey to be all about? And that's where you start drawing this line across the country and start looking at what you know about the country and what you don't know about the country. And so for me, going into this journey, I had a few parameters. I wanted to start my run in the South, and I wanted to spend as much time in the South as I could during this run. Given that I had not really seen much of the South really in my entire life, despite probably 20 plus years of travel. I think I'd spent a total of 4 or 5 days traveling in the South. And you know, when you talk about a divided country and getting to know a place, like going across it on foot and talking to people one-on-one is hands down the best way to get to know a place. So yeah, I kind of looked at certain areas along the coast that would be a great place to start my run. And I found this place, Folly Beach, South Carolina, where the sign as you enter into town says the edge of America. And when I got there and saw that, I just thought that was perfect. I wanted to finish my run in San Francisco, a place that I'd called home off and on for about 5 or 6 years. And I knew that I'd have a lot of friends there to help bring the journey home. I wanted to pass through my hometown of Aspen, Colorado. I figured I could use that recharge about 2/3 the way across the country. And I wanted my journey to be informed not just by the states and the politics of those states, but also I really wanted it to be informed by the nature that helps define those places. And for me, that meant finding as many through hiking trails through those areas as I could. And then the one kind of closest to Oklahoma would have been the Ozark Highlands Trail, going across a portion of Arkansas. So I believe I had just gotten off of that trail maybe a week or two earlier before I'd gotten into Oklahoma. But it was a way for me to see both nature and meet people along the way.
Yeah, and that's what's really beautiful about your book, and that I love it, and your running experiences and your running endeavors and adventures, that you really go beyond just the foot and the pavement, but yet you utilize this extra artistic skill and outreach on that behalf to capture people's stories. You know, where do you think that comes from, to wanting to know people in that way? Has it always been a draw for you to kind of look into people's past and wanting to get to know more? Has that always been something that you've tied to your running, to get to know communities and when you travel abroad and things like that?
Well, I mean, I think first of all, I think part of it, I have to acknowledge, like with your land acknowledgement that you started this engagement off with. I think that if we truly want to get to know people, like, you have to look so much further back than just like the interaction that you're having with them, or the red MAGA hat that they're wearing on their head. Like, we're so much more complicated than that, and it's so easy to label someone just based on appearances, but the history there is so much more complicated. So that's me at 39 years old saying that, and you're asking if this has always been the case, and with me, and I'm not sure if it's always been the case, but I think that I've always just wanted to get to know people. Like, when I go into a room and there's 5 people there, and there's 3 that I know and 2 that I don't know, my instinct is to go talk to the 2 people that I don't know. And for me, that in the past has been really intimidating to do that during something like my run across the country, where you gain a lot of confidence and you're wearing what I would explain to people as something of a costume. You know, I've got this long beard, I've got this backpack, you know, I smell different than other people. People see you, and they see in a room full of people, they can see that there's one person in there that's doing something really crazy, like running across the country. So in that sense, it was easy for me to sort of take on that role and get to know people, because people wanted to get to know me. It's a lot more challenging in our day-to-day lives when, you know, we looked at more like everybody else, and it's easier to stay inside our bubbles and rely on our preconceived notions of people. My background in college, I studied sociology, and I studied photography, and I studied writing. And really, for all of those 3 things to come together, it's essential that you have curiosity about people. If you want them to come together in terms of figuring out your country and trying to come out with a book in the end. You can lack curiosity and still run across the country. You can lack curiosity and still come out with some sort of book. But the intersection of all of these things is for me what has resulted in this book that I'm really happy about, that I get to put out there, a piece of artwork that explores the differences and similarities of our fellow Americans, and see where we can kind of get this conversation going to, which is really the ultimate goal, is to bring us closer together.
Yeah, for sure. That's great. I think that's important. I want to let everyone know who's listening that we do have a Q&A going as well. So if you have any questions for Rickey or myself or about the book, be sure and type them in there, and then we're going to hit them up. We're going to look at the questions, and we'll get them answered at the end of the segment, probably in about 20 minutes. That's funny because, like, not funny, but it's just, I was looking over some things, and Outside Magazine labeled you the rambling poet of the runner's world in an article, which I thought was funny. I don't know how what you think of that, but that's funny that they said that. And then another thing too, that when you kind of described yourself going into these places, I remember one moment when you kind of discussed how people would kind of look at you when you were on this journey across America, somewhere in the South or wherever. You'd have these bright red Solomon shoes on that look like probably ruby red slippers or something, you know, to these people. And they're like, who is this guy shuffling down the street in these ruby red slippers? So I just thought that was funny. And that you kind of brought that up, that the imagery again of what you were wearing, and people see you and they're just kind of like, what's going on? Who is this person? You know?
Yeah.
I'm going to read something too that you wrote in the book. When you were planning a route. Though I had never attempted a distance of this magnitude, I had learned over decades of running and racing that to cross a place on foot is to observe and participate in a vast and complex web of infrastructure. It is to experience the history of that place in a very real and personal way. It is to have a better understanding of what that place is. And I really agree with that. There's something that I remember from a long time ago. I can't recall what it's from, but hearing something, the only way you can really grasp the distance or essence of a place is by traveling it through foot. And cars don't allow you, or airplanes don't do that for you, you know, but it's through the essence of moving with your own feet and momentum. And so when I read that, I was, that brought me back to when I heard something about that too. And maybe it's the reason why I like exploring as well, or traveling, or why I reached out to you. Because when Rickey Gates came through here, I reached out to him and I ran with him for a couple of days, and we left from Hominy, Oklahoma, ended up in Ponca City. And when I reached him that morning in Hominy, he had just weathered out a storm that night on the side of a road or something. And because you slept under bridges and on the side of the roads, and you know, you carried a minimal amount of gear, and we could talk about what you carried quickly after this. And when I met you, we found a little laundromat. I'm surprised there was one actually there in that town, because that's where I'm from. That's where my district's from. Osage District is Hominy, Oklahoma. And then we got your stuff dry, and then we moved on. And that was the beginning of 2 days of crossing Osage County. But those words that I just read from your book, often, you know, I've never done that myself, ran that distance in Oklahoma, and it's where I'm from. And I know another guy in Oklahoma who's ran from across the state, just like a lot of people do that are from that state. They have FKTs of, you know, crossing the state and whatever. But it was really beautiful to see that, to see the landscape, to see all the trees, to see the moments of the day pass by as we're passing miles to one town to the other that I'm only aware of and have experienced through car journeys, you know. And then we get into Ralston, which is a whole nother story. But going into Ralston after 30 miles, I believe that day we almost slept under a bridge, but we didn't. And we can talk about this next moment. But quickly, can you talk about what you carried and why you carried it, and the lack of carrying things and so forth? And I know I made a post today about gas station nutrition, because to be effective on the move is to carry the most minimal amount of weight and carry what you need to. and I think you might show the pack here, and then going to the gas station and just picking up Pop-Tarts and beef jerky and sodas and carrying that and taking off. So.
Yeah. Well, I love gas station food. First of all, I liked it before this run, and I came to like it even more during the run. It's a luxury that I have, that a lot of us runners have, that we're able to eat at gas stations and not experience too much of a negative effect. I do think that it's an issue in our society that it's sometimes the only source of food for a lot of areas. That's one thing that I did reflect on deeply during my run, is that it was fine by me, but it was clearly a nutritional disaster for a lot of communities. And then kind of touching on, going across a place on foot is something that I knew before this run was going to be powerful. In Yatika, I know that you've done some really long runs that have lasted 24 plus hours, and this idea of experiencing a place, I think such a important part of it is that your senses change as you move across the place. What you are doing to your body, like physically what you are doing to your body, and what that is in turn doing to your brain, is in a way, like I use this term pretty often, an idea of forced meditation. Like you didn't intend on meditating on this place, but now you've been out there for 20 hours. It's now raining, you're cold, like you kind of want to be anywhere in the world other than where you are. Your sleeping bag's wet, but here you are. This is forced meditation. It is requiring that you are 100% present at midnight in a rainstorm next to a road in Oklahoma. And I can tell you, I hated it at the time. I love that I experienced it. And I think that a lot of people can say that about a lot of things. And I think that running in particular is one of those things that that draws us closer to that. But yeah, so I don't always have my bucket of stuff, but this is the bucket that I used to get across the desert there. I think it's in that little baby stroller. And here's the ruby red running shoes that Yatika had mentioned. And then here's my very, very smelly, it still smells very bad to this day, 3 years later. But this is my running pack, which I used otherwise when I wasn't using the baby jogger, which was just during the desert. So this is what Yatika found me as in Oklahoma, kind of how I was decked out. But yeah, it's fun to pull it out of there. I don't know how long. I'll probably have it forever, but the number of people that'll actually appreciate a smelly backpack is few and far between.
That's amazing. That's amazing. It's that experience to Oklahoma for me to run with you was really beautiful, and that's why we're here talking. And I was happy to share that with you and pause for a while off the side of the road and share a Pop-Tart or beef jerky. And I knew our destination was Ponca City, and that you were going to continue on with your path. As for me, as sharing that journey with you, I felt it was important. Important for me to see the landscape that I'm from through foot. You know, I love adventure. I love giving myself challenges. But to be able to share journeys with someone else is really beautiful when that happens. And then to also maybe get experience or learn from someone that has more knowledge or has more experience is always a plus of some kind of mentorship through the roads. And so it was really cool to be able to do that with you. But as as a Native person who's from that area, as an Osage Cherokee and Creek person, crossing the Osage Reservation where we were from with you, it was fun to be able to share some of the stories with you, you know, that I was told when I was a kid or that I've grown up with, or give you correct information about a state that has so much incorrectness to it, you know. And I think when you travel across the landscapes of the Americas, you're often, you know, confronted with realities of what's true and what's not. And I know in your book, you kind of delineate these kind of perceptions of what is true and what's not by interviewing people and getting their side of the stories and getting the truths, you know, because the truths often come from their past and what they want to share with you. As a muralist, I've been in places where I'm on a wall for a week straight, hours at a time in a day, and as I'm there painting, I become a beacon almost, and people come up and start talking to me. They want to share things with me. I don't ask them to, but they want to. And I imagine there was probably some kind of similar thing happening with you when you're out there and going into places and interacting with people, like you said, going up to people that you wouldn't normally, and then conversating with them, but they would open up to you because you were there at the right time, right place, and you would get these really gold mines of beautiful experiences and stories, and therefore you put them in your book, and that enabled you to know about the state you're crossing and the past and things like that, you know. So looking at your book too, and at the early sketches, you had like marked down the Trail of Tears, you know, so you had all this in mind, a bit of the past of the United States, of Indian removals and things like that, and trails. And I think a lot of the things that happens in trail running and ultra running in the United States is that a lot of these trails that we do these races on, or that are scattered through mountains and hills, are passing through indigenous lands, you know, and have had a past with indigenous landscapes like that. So I thought that was really cool and important that that you took that time to look at that and see that, but also to spend time with me, that I could share these informations with you about the county that we're going from, that's important to me and that I'm from, and that I could give you better and correct insight into the county that we were running through. Can you maybe talk about a little bit about what you thought of that, Osage County, and then maybe indigenous lands that you had passed through on your way? Because I know you went out west too, and you also went through a lot of probably communities out that way as well.
Yeah, totally. So one of the things that I wanted to touch on, just kind of, you had mentioned how while you're doing a mural, you kind of become a beacon for people to come up and talk to you. And I just kind of think that there's a pretty tight parallel between running across a place and being a public artist, doing art in public. In that, in both of those things, people recognize that you are doing something vulnerable. Being an artist in public is you might as well be like opening your heart up and using that as the paint that's going up on the wall right there. That's coming from deep inside you. And then the same goes for running across a place. You are doing this thing that is by definition a form of suffering, and people recognize that suffering, and they are willing to meet you, maybe not halfway, but they're going to meet you a little bit of the way with a little bit of their suffering and tell you a little bit about it, and try and share that with you. So I think that's really important to recognize that. In terms of going across, you know, a place on foot, and, you know, the Osage Nation was one of the most interesting places that I went through on my run, in large part because you were with me there, Yatika. Because we really didn't interact with all that many Native people from the Osage County when we went through there. And this is a book that I regretfully still haven't read yet, but correct me on the title if I'm wrong. Children of the Flower Moon.
Yeah, Killers of the Flower Moon.
Killers of the Flower Moon, which describes this long and bloody history in the Osage Nation that you, Yatika, helped kind of illuminate for me as we were going across there. And so I'm simultaneously experiencing a place with someone who has blood going back generations, many generations, while passing by and talking to people that have been there for maybe 5 or 6 generations and have sort of a different story. And I found that as my run went along across the United States, when talking to people, I felt that it was not really my my goal or my prerogative to correct them on anything. So I wanted to hear what their version of the history of that place was. And so, and I think we really got that as we went across this, this small portion of the United States and talking to some of the people in that Osage Nation, and just got some incredible stories out of them. Some of them pleasant, and some of them less than pleasant. So, but I think that's all kind of part of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, yeah. There's, like I said, in this whole conversation, you can take one segment of this trip and just really kind of make it into a whole other book, because there's so much to talk about, and we only have so much time here. So that being said, you guys got to get the book and read it and look at all the photos, because there's so many really beautiful photos. That's one thing I really love about it. And I remember when I was running with you, is that we would stop and take photos of people, and you would listen to their stories. And that was a really cool aspect of this journey that I was able to share with you, and an aspect that I got to see you do and now see in fruition here. Before we end it in about 10 minutes probably, and you can kind of talk about the ending segment when you had to switch out to a baby cart with water, and because you crossed the vast desert with no water in sight and had to sleep and rest at midday to avoid the suns, and then your ocean, getting to the ocean, to the finish line out there. Before that, I want to say that we have a few questions here. Megan asks, how were the Ozark Highlands? Did you run the whole 165 plus miles?
The Ozark Highland Trail was incredible. I did not, I don't think, with the exception of maybe the Western States Trail, I didn't do the entirety of any given trail. I just kind of like, the Ozark Highlands Trail kind of goes like that. And so I kind of pick it up right here and then go across. So I did about 120 miles of the Ozark Highlands Trail. I have spent a lot of time in Alaska, and for some reason, all I could think of when I was going through the Ozarks was how similar it was in feeling to a lot of places that I've been to in Alaska. Amazing landscape. The time of year that I went through there, iridescent green. The limestone, the water going through the limestone turns all the streams this really beautiful milky blue color. I saw one person on the trail in 5 days. It was really something else. It's a place I'd love to get back to. It's a great kind of late fall, winter, springtime, low hills, incredible trail territory, terrain that we have access to.
Wow. I got to run that. That sounds really good. I got to run that trail, and I will. David asks, who financed your journey, and how did you arrange your lodging and meals? I'm sure he's in for a treat on that one.
Yeah. So in terms of who financed the journey, I financed the journey on my own. So I thought that was particularly important. If me, as someone who's a professional runner and wanting to put a journey like this out into the public, and wanting others, the public, to see this as something that they can take on. I believe the timeline that I did this in, over 5 months, I believe the route that I chose, my lack of support, doing it primarily self-supported, and the budget that I used, I did $5,000 for 5 months. So that's about $1,000 a month. I thought those were all appropriate for somebody that might be waiting tables or bartending or something like that, to try and take on a similar journey. I did have my brother sending me a care package to post offices along the way, general delivery. Our post office, the USPS, seems to be under attack right now. And I can't tell you how much I really appreciate the US Post Service to be able to arrive at a post office in the middle of nowhere and tell them your name and show them your ID and pick up a package that was sent to you from your brother out in Colorado with a new pair of shoes and possibly some snacks in there, or some anti-chafing something or other, was a total godsend. And so yeah, so that was about it. And then I spent probably 6 nights a week out camping, and then 1 night a week I'd stay in a motel or something like that, to kind of gather all my stuff, recharge my batteries, and take a much needed shower.
Anonymous asks, what preconceptions about what you would see and how you would be treated were the most off? You saw people and places at a pace that really allowed you to focus on what was before you. Of course, on my long runs, I often zone out and see nothing.
That's the beauty of a really, really, really long run, is that you go through everything. You go through moments of seeing nothing, and then you go through moments of seeing everything, and then you sleep in between, and then you stuff your face full of food. I guess the one that kind of sticks out the most to me is, like, I've had preconceived notions about the South. I tried at the very beginning of this run to do my best in not really allowing those notions to get into my head too much as I was entering those places. But the amount of generosity that I experienced throughout the South was unmatched to any country I've ever been through. The number of people that pulled over their car and opened up their wallets to me. And mind you, it was initially like so honored and grateful to be even doing this journey. I explained to people, like, I don't need this money. I saved up my money for this trip. I've got enough. But just seeing this need almost to participate in this journey that I was on. And for some people, the only way to participate is to take out $5 out of their wallet and hand it over, and with the hopes that it'll help me with a room or a drink or some chips or whatever it might be. Yeah, that rang through every single day for the entire time that I was in the South. And that was just another reason why I was so grateful to start my journey there. Because when you're starting a huge journey off like this, you know, people patting your back and putting some bread in front of you and some money in your pocket, just as a way to participate and help move you along. It was just really wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember you telling me, and I think I witnessed it too, someone giving you money, but that pretty much just financed you the whole way of people's generosity, giving you a $20 bill or a $50 bill or something, you know, along the way. I remember that was something that was happening for you out there on the journey. And Ross asked, or any problems with the police? And then an anonymous asks, what would you do differently if you ever set off on a similar trip?
I didn't have any problems with the police throughout the trip. I was pulled over a few times going across the desert because I was pushing a baby jogger, and the police did need to make sure that there wasn't an actual baby in my baby jogger. So a reasonable suspicion. I don't know. Out in the middle of Nevada, you can see some pretty strange stuff. but yeah, it was kind of interesting. I guess there was one place in Tennessee where I got pulled over and asked to see my ID, and I thought that was a bit peculiar. And he just explained that that's how they do things in that town, and so I went along with it. So yeah, the police were for the most part really amazing. It's important to me to recognize and acknowledge that I'm of a demographic that gets to pass through this society really quite easily with not a lot of issues. I know that this journey would have been quite different if I had a different color skin, or if I was a different gender, or any of these things. So I acknowledge that, and I just hope that we can move forward and make it possible so that anyone can truly take this journey on if they so choose.
Yeah, and I thought about that too, you know, in the time that we're living in, and the movement that's going on, and everything that's happening within this world right now, especially within the U.S. How we talk about privilege, and and especially in running, how we've seen lately in every running platform or format or magazine outlet, articles have come out, you know, that have talked directly on this, and have expressed this, and have talked with runners of color, and how running is political just by its own nature and things like that, you know. And then you have a pandemic in it too. So if you were to have those two happening, you know, and you've traversed this landscape where it's, you know, it's to be doing that now would be unheard of, the safety of it. But I think about that, you know, and two, I want that too for people, and for younger runners or people to be able to be inspired, to challenge themselves like that, to want to do that, to maybe, if you so desire, run across your state and feel safe about it, you know, or like you did after you finished this in 2018, you ran a project called Every Single Street in San Francisco that took 46 days, covering 1,300 miles and 147,000 feet of climbing. You documented every single street in San Francisco, which led to another boom of people doing the same thing and challenge, hashtag Every Single Street, where people could post their challenges that they've done in their own neighborhoods, giving them the opportunity to explore their community in a whole nother light, almost like a little version of what you did in this cross-country trek. But even that gives people the ability to try something unique and step up to a challenge. You know, I think we have to step up to the challenge of adversity right now in the nation that we are in, and running enables us that. And there are outlets out there in communities and running groups that offer those safe platforms for people of color to do that. So I'm glad you say that, because I want to work with you and towards other people that we can make a nation where we feel safe as cyclists of color, or runners of color, or hikers of color, you know, in this country, where we can traverse and trek through this nation that should be possible for us to feel comfortable in, you know. And there's so much to be said on that. And I know you witnessed a lot on that. And there's a lot in the book that you cover, and it starts with it and ends with it too, the spectrum of politics in the country and running. So I just want to say that, you know, as a panelist here, and I'm talking with you, that I too kind of see that and want something better for the world and for all participating athletes or runners or enthusiasts and adventurers, that we can have a place of comfort to be able to express ourselves in a journey like such. So cheers to that. Thank you. And so you got to the ocean. You finished the journey.
Totally, yeah. 5 months to the day, I arrived at Ocean Beach in San Francisco. It's funny to sort of plan things. You know, I didn't plan much about that trip. but I did plan being in San Francisco, and I planned being surrounded by friends. And sure enough, to the day, 5 months, I arrived there, and it was like no feeling that I've ever had in my life before. The feeling of accomplishment, but also of total nothingness, just complete depletion. Like my brain was exhausted, my body was exhausted. All I knew was that I was surrounded by the people that I love, and a bunch of strangers that I also very much loved. And yeah, it's I don't know, it's dangerous territory, kind of trying to compare what this journey is in terms of other historical and almost like metaphysical journeys that we know about in our human history. But I do think that there's a reason that pilgrimage is so important in certain religious philosophies, because I think that it's this thing that takes us to a different state of mind and empathy that can't be faked in almost any other way. Really, the only other way that I've encountered is like pure meditation. So this journey really took that on and embraced it. The thing about meditation and about journeys like this is that they are not permanent. And so for me, taking on that next project of every single street and doing that again in other places that I've lived around the country and in Mexico and now in Santa Fe, it's just it reminds me that it's an ongoing journey, that it's, if not every day, then every week, or at least whenever we pick it up. So that's where I am right now, is 3 years after I finished this run. I'm happy to have accomplished it. I'm happy to have done it. But I'm still looking for the next way to get to know the place where I am right now. And for me, that's Santa Fe, New Mexico. It's the United States, but really specifically, it's this new home of mine.
Yeah. And even that place has so much history to it as well.
Yeah.
Like every state. That's beautiful. I can imagine that it was really transformative, reaching that ocean, touching it with your feet, and hearing the ocean and the waves, and kind of traversing back probably over all the roads and memories and people and stories that you passed to get to that point. And I'm sure you still think about it so much. So that's beautiful. We got one more question. And it's from my sister, actually. So, so she says, Rickey, you've talked a lot about your connection with place and aspects of history and people, but how is your personal experience with the connection to the land? I think you kind of touched about it, but just in the last kind of segment that you talked about too.
Yeah, I mean, I think the connection with the land is, this isn't the right word for it. And I'm still searching for the right word. But when you go across a place on foot, and whether that be a small place, whether that be around your block, across your town, across your county, across your state, over a mountain range, up and down a mountain, whatever it is, when you do that on foot, there's a certain level of ownership that you have to it. And the word ownership is the word that I want to find a better word for. But there's a connection between you and the soul of that place. And I truly believe that. And no one can really ever take that away from you. And whether it's private property or park boundaries, or, the hours of park boundaries, or whatever it might be, when you go across a place, there's a level of connection that you can only get when you have a physical, a truly physical interaction with that place. So it lives on. I'm in Santa Fe. I'm 300 miles, I think, into this 700-mile project of running every single street in this city of about 100,000 people. And I stick to that. There's a level of ownership that I have to this town. There's a level of connectedness that I have to this town that I know can't be faked in any other way. You know, I could have been born and raised here. I could have come here and, you know, gotten into politics or whatever it might be, but nothing really can substitute actually going down every street and experiencing that place on a one-on-one, personal and intimate basis.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, and it's beautiful in a way that I think it's everyone's own journey and path and foot that they set forth, that they're going to gain their own interpretation of what they cross and what they see, and it's very unique to their own upbringing and understanding. But to share it is another beautiful aspect of that too. One more passage from your book. There is an overlooked monotony present in most great adventures. In undertaking a journey that I had hoped could be approached by the everyman, I had neglected to realize the change that occurs as a result of that monotony. I only became aware of the change by the evolution of reactions I received inside gas stations. I packed away the packaged donuts, warm Coke, Slim Jims, and water. I situated things into the 5-gallon bucket and the bucket into the jogger. As I climbed out of the culvert and onto the highway, the chirping of crickets and symphony of birds increased, and the pastel hues of sunset grew more intense. You know, there's a lot of beautiful passages in the book from your memories and from what you saw of sunsets and sounds, roads, exploding tires, leaves in the trees and the wind and things like that. So, you know, I just want to thank you for your time tonight, for being here and being able to share your journey. And thank you for allowing me to share some of your journey as well with you on this trip. It was great for me to run some of that path with you and to be able to still share some paths with you as we did last week in the mountains. And I look forward to more of those with you as well. In parting, do you have last words to say to the viewers, fellow thrill seekers and adventurers?
Certainly, I'm grateful to Magic City Books for helping put this together, and I already gave a shout out to Trevor earlier for being the connection between everything here. Yatika, thank you for helping make this happen and asking such wonderful questions. My parting thing is I'm always trying to figure out how to get more and more people to experience more of what I experience, and I think so many people are intimidated by running and even the word run, and so like my job is to encourage people to get out there and challenge themselves and ignore that word run, go out there and move and figure out a way that will allow you to see and experience the place around you in a way that you haven't seen or experienced it before. And so pull out a map and figure out something that'll challenge you in that way. It doesn't have to be across the country, it doesn't have to be across the county, but it does have to be outside your front door and ideally in a direction that you've not moved before. So yeah. With that, I thank you and really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. So everyone get outside, explore your community, run safe, run with the mask, bring a mask, and yeah, and check out Rickey's book. It's beautiful. I think you'll dig it.